morning, Pastor Bill.
Sure, don't make me do violence to you right here on my program. God love every one of you, and welcome to the Gospel According to Kinison, and I am your illustrious host. I am the man, Bill Kinison, and I look forward to this every single week. I wish I had more time.
Good morning, Jack Friedman.
Jack Friedman, couldn't do this without it. Please like the Gospel According to Kinison. Man, I had to stop and think of my own program.
I hope you had a wonderful show last night. I'm waiting to hear from Joe Sumter's review.
That's right, Jack's an actor.
Good morning, Rochelle Haas.
Rochelle?
Lord.
Okay, was you going to say something?
No, I just...
Oh, okay. Yeah, good morning to Rochelle. She posted, and I think her son posted, I think it's her grandchildren, a little one wrestling, and...
I didn't see it.
Oh, yeah, and then the daughter, which I think is probably like Scarlett's age, or she won the 12 and under. And I just, being a former wrestler, I loved it. And they were good, by the way. They were really good. They got a good coach.
Good morning, John Lutz.
John Lutz.
Sharon Stein.
Or should I say John Lutz?
We're
going to be praying for John in just a little bit. And Sharon Stein, she reminds me, Sherry and I don't know what time I finally drifted off to sleep. I think Sherry was still awake. And we were watching and praying on the situation that was at the Congregation Beth Israel Temple. And the terrorist, I think, ended up killed, but all the hostages were released, which I thank God, and I'm full of thankfulness for that. And there's no room for terrorism, people. I don't care where it's at. There is no room for terrorism. So that's my little thing for Sharon.
Good morning, Joe Sumter. Him and Jackie are watching.
Well, all right.
Buddy Bertino.
So he's got a beautiful woman with him.
Yes.
And Buddy.
Jeff McLaughlin, good afternoon.
And Jeff McLaughlin.
Faith is watching. Sharon Stein, thank God they are all okay.
Yes, I totally agree. Totally agree. All right. Sherry.
Yes, sir.
I don't even know where to start here. It almost makes me cry. But we have got a list. I think the longest list, and we don't have everybody. We're just doing the best we can to pray for. John Lutz, that's watching this morning, he is battling COVID and is in the hospital. And I probably will talk to him later after we get off the program. He's one of my best friends, and we've been praying for him and talking to him. He's really battled with that. Also, we have a few people that have transitioned, starting with my cousin Mike Lohman in Las Vegas, transitioned this week. He asked me a couple months ago when I talked to him to pray that God would take him. He was ready, and he wanted to leave. He wanted to leave. And God granted his desire. A very, very close friend, Holly Gleason, her friend, Dan, which is actually more than a friend. They were engaged at one time, but we're praying for Holly and then Dan's family, Ellen, his wife, and their friends. He transitioned just a couple days ago, and we were praying for him, but I think he probably made the decision that he was ready to transition. Also, we got a message this morning concerning Crystal Sizik, who was a neighbor of your mother and father's, but her entire family attended our church when we pastored in Peoria, Illinois.
Rockford, Illinois.
Rockford, Illinois. That had been a little drive for him, been a 150-mile drive if been down in Peoria. But she transitioned with COVID, I guess yesterday morning or today or yesterday. And we want to remember that entire family, Bonnie, and Dawn and Judy and Holly and just the entire family. We want to remember them in prayer. Also, we have a prayer request for Jenny Conradi. She's a missionary, and she was airlifted to Miami and needs a miracle. So I want all of you to join together with me and remember them in prayer. And I don't know if we prayed for Bob Saget's family, his wife and his daughters. Last week he passed. It was last Saturday, but I don't know if we got the news in time for our program. But well, let's hold that family up in prayer. And Rita Lundstrom she's starting chemo. And that's no fun. That's no fun. But we're going to believe from God for a complete recovery. And I guess that's it, Sherry. I want to read. I read this last week. I want to read it again today, and it's become my mantra for someone that has passed. And it was out of Betty White's book. We were going to Dallas, Texas for a funeral last weekend, and out of all the preachers that spoke, and there was a lot, the greatest words I heard was from my wife in the automobile, and she was telling me what she had read that was out of Betty White's book. And I just want to read this one little paragraph. I don't get depressed as the number climbs, perhaps because I don't fear death. I'm quoting my mother, she said, but her take on the subject I thought was great. She said, we know so much and can discover so much more, but what no one knows for sure is exactly what happens when we pass on. When we lose someone, we would grieve, of course, but she said, now he knows the secret. These folks I've read to you, now they know the secret. And I want to read that again because I think that's going to be my mantra when someone passes, is now they know the secret. That none of us know, but we know it's great. I want to give you a little history of myself, how I got here and I got to what I teach. And Sherry, she took the same journey I did, and then we got together and got to do it together. First, we were raised Pentecostal. Now, I can't say for Sherry, but I thought Pentecostals had religion and God, and that other people were just out of luck, Sherry. It was too bad. Too bad. They were missing some important element in their makeup so that they could not see the real truth, because the Pentecostals had it. We had the truth. It was sad that they would all be lost in the fires of hell, but it couldn't be helped. They made their decision. I remember I had an uncle, Uncle Dewey, and he was Catholic. I think the only Catholic person in this entire big family. And I loved Uncle Dewey, and it used to almost make me cry as a kid, thinking that he's going to go to hell. He's going to go to hell because he's Catholic. It used to bother me. But then we thought they were given opportunities to come over to the right church, which obviously was our church, but they refused. There was confusion about our religion that I never understood. People died, and according to our beliefs, they went to heaven, but we all would sit around and weep about it. I never understood that. What never did make sense to me was the unlikely combination of kindness and cruelty having to do with God. I couldn't understand how he could have both those elements. He would punish in hell for eternity. I mean, forever and ever. No end. No end. For those who either disobeyed him or who didn't know his name. While on the other hand, he was supposed to be kind and a loving friend of whom we could ask things for. I believe the saints and the martyrs were his pets. And I strove to be God's number one pet. I knew that if he really liked me and saw that I was doing things for him, he might spare me from death, hell, sorrow, and all the other bad things. So I tried to be his pet. And that was difficult for me being a boy, because it seemed like I was always in trouble. We all felt the pain that we felt was the price that God asked for his love, that we had to suffer. And that justified being poor, being sick, growing old at an early age. That justified it, because if we were going through that pain, we just felt like that was the price that God asked, that we suffered for his name's sake. The poor, the starving, the overburdened, and the crippled were always thought to be more deserving of God's love than the well-to-do and the comfortable people. Matter of fact, we didn't like wealthy people. Or even if you were probably middle class, we didn't like him. Because we couldn't understand how you could have that stuff and serve God. Because we remained without all that stuff, trying to serve God, or trying to tell God we were worthy. Usually when we see Christianity, we see it as being the religion of Jesus of Nazareth. Well, there was always something not believable about the Christian viewpoint of Jesus. To me, he was an enigma, because he was so high and pure that someone like me just couldn't understand him. I mean, he was, forget about a level of his own, he was beyond that. I eventually fell completely away from Christianity and religion altogether. I just quit. I just accepted I was going to go to hell and might as well enjoy the ride. The wonderful thing about it was, though, that I had dumped this whole confusing mess. There was still something inside of me, that spiritual inside of me, that was alive and loving. And as I discarded everything, I mean, I hated church. I felt like I didn't like God. I could still feel God was still there. If there's a major problem with the Bible, it's not with the text itself, but it's with those that interpret it for the sole purpose of their own cause. That's where I basically came from. I went to college, went to Bible college. And in Bible college, I really went there to know more about God and everything else. It didn't work, because there were discrepancies that I thought between what they were teaching and what the Bible actually said. And when I would ask them about it, they would just give me that kind of a dumb look, like, I don't know, and smile and just keep on keep on teaching what they were teaching. So I left. I left Bible college after a year. Actually, I was encouraged not to come back, which I understood. So I started trusting something inside of me that I call the God in me. Now let me tell you about God's purpose to reconcile and restore this entire creation back to Him. There's nothing that can change the purpose of God. One of the biggest fallacies ever taught by religion, and that's any religion, is that your destiny is in doubt. Your destiny is not in doubt. Your destiny has never changed. Your road may be difficult, but where you're coming to and where you're going to end up has never changed. Religion taught us that by willingness we either accept God and we are saved, or by our own will we reject Him and we're lost throughout eternity. That's what religion teaches. That's not the facts. That's not the truth, I should say. You see, I believe that God rules and I think He is sovereign, which the word sovereign means possesses supreme dominion. To understand, for you to understand that, you have to understand predestination. Now, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we brought it up, and Sherry chimed in with they were afraid of it because I went. There's certain things you didn't preach in churches. One was predestination. They were afraid of it. I don't know why, because they wanted to have control of you. So there's a difference. What I want to show you, there's a difference in the plan and His purpose. Some people literally miss God's plan, but it doesn't change the purpose. Years ago, Sharon and I lived in Oklahoma City. We pastored in Oklahoma City. I think that was the second church I've ever pastored. And my family lived in Tulsa, so we would drive back and forth on the Will Rogers Turnpike over to Tulsa on I-40. And you had to pay tolls. We were just at Oklahoma, and we drove from Tulsa to Oklahoma City. I don't remember if we paid any tolls. This time, maybe they've disbanded that. But back then, you had to pay a toll. But in place of pay, or what you got for paying that toll, was no stop signs, no stop lights, a beautiful straight drive. Or, if you didn't want to pay, you could take Route 66. And Route 66 would take you through every little town, every stop sign, every little hole in the wall. Probably take you twice as long, but your destination is still going to be the same. Well, I want to tell you something today. You are not a free moral agent. You see, some people totally miss God's plan. That doesn't change the purpose and the destination. I remember we just drove to Dallas, and you could take 35, which is a freeway. It just keeps getting better. You go through Austin and everything else, or they have a toll road, Route 130. You get on that, and there's hardly no one on there. It costs about $15. But there's no one on there. The speed limit is 85 miles an hour. And so you can get on that and have a smooth ride. I guess if you had a Tesla, you could just put it in drive, and take a nap. What I'm trying to show you is, folks, being predestinated limits and puts boundaries on the limits of your choices. Somebody said, well, how do I know if I'm predestinated? Well, I actually have my Bible. Let me read a scripture or two out of the Bible in Romans 8 and 28. And we know, there is no doubt. We know that all things, how many? All things work together for good to them that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Now, I really didn't want to get into all this, but I have to get into some of it. You can't understand why God permits suffering, nations to be hungry, people to be in remote areas of the earth, unless you understand God's plan and God's predestination. Those who are chosen, that's going to be you. Those who are chosen don't have a decision because God has already made that for you. Somebody said, well, how do you know if I'm chosen? You're listening to me. You're listening to me. The only choices you have is whether you want to take I-40 or you want to take Route 66. But the destination is going to remain the same. I want you to look at Jesus. I told you I've been studying here now for a few months the secular part of Jesus, the fleshly man Jesus, not the spiritual man, just the fleshly man. And I found it to be so interesting. And maybe one Sunday we'll get into that. Been so interesting. But what I noticed was he would walk and teach. And thousands would follow him. They would follow him. And he'd speak to them in parables. Then he had 12. And I think it's interesting for this 12 that he could walk by them and say, follow me. And they would leave their job, which most of them were fishermen. They'd leave their profession, leave their family, and they followed him. But only 12. Not all the thousands. They all went back home. Then they would find him the next day. Why? There were 12 that were chosen. Even the 12 that he chose I thought was interesting. Because not one of them had a ministerial background. Not one. Not one had a spiritual background. We walk and we're trying to figure out how to have health, wealth, joy, happiness, prosperity. When you realize the God in you, when you realize that, then you begin to realize you have the power. You control your destiny. You're the one. You don't have to wait for somebody else. You have the power to be happy. You have the power to be wealthy. Folks, I'm going to tell you something. See, those who are chosen don't have a decision because God has already made it for them. You don't decide. You yield to the decision. But it's a decision that gives you power. Power to control your life. That's why everyone that you want to pray for doesn't necessarily receive what you would like for them to receive. They may not be chosen. You'll meet many people that will not accept what I'm telling you today. You can tell it to your pastor if you're still in church. And they probably aren't going to accept it because they believe every man is a free moral agent. That we decide. I'm glad God took that decision making out of me a long time ago. See, religion many times will tell you that God's will is to heal you. The condition of healing does not depend. I should say, they'll tell you many times it wasn't God's will for someone to be healed. The condition of healing does not depend on whether or not it's God's will to heal you, because it is God's will to heal His children. Healing is the children's bread that this greatest success book ever written has declared. You have the right to be healed. Why are so many people not healed? Because of a misappropriation of their own faith. That's the only reason. Now, John 1:13, which were born not of blood, nor the will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. These people were born out of predestination. I want you to deal with God's power. I also want you to know that if you're predestinated to be God's chosen, then He's going to get you even if no one preaches to you. Paul was a chosen vessel. Nobody wanted him. Disciples didn't want him, and you couldn't blame them. He used to walk around with death warrants, and he could kill anybody he wanted to if they were a Christian, if they were a believer. He was a chosen vessel, though. God had chosen him. God has chosen every one of you. Somebody said, well, I've never been saved. Your salvation was attained 2,000 years ago. You are a child of God. Matter of fact, wherever you're at, just say it out loud. I'm a child of God. I am birthed by God. What would make men, like I told you, that are working on their jobs and follow a stranger that they've never seen before just because he said, follow me? Only one thing can cause that. Chosen. Why are you every Sunday turning on, and we get more and more every week? This program's growing so fast that it's almost unbelievable. Why? Because you're chosen. I'm going to tell you something. You're special. You're not like everybody else. Many are called. Few are chosen. You are a chosen vessel. And with that chosen vessel, all the power comes with that. Ephesians 1:4, according as He hath chosen us before the foundation of the world. He planned this before the foundation of the world. He planned this before He created the world. We are entrusted with God's power for the purpose to fulfill His purpose. Oh, man. What is His purpose for us? Very simply, that we walk healthy, wealthy, successful, and happy. Every one of you who are predestined in God, and I think that's every one of you listening to me, because what we do on this program, we're speaking more plainly unto you. When I was an evangelist, I think I used to preach in parables. But on this program, and I really believe you're chosen, that God gets all the conditions ready for you to watch this, for you to find out where we were, find out what's going on. You're chosen. You may have not liked the message to start with, but there's something that just keeps bringing you back. And it's not just a desire to be healthy and wealthy. No, it's deeper than that. But his purpose for us is that we're healthy, we're wealthy, we're successful, we're happy. Every one of you who are predestined of God, God has planned to let you experience the exceeding greatness of his power. My Lord, my Lord, my Lord. God gives you power in spite of yourself. But many times the power can't work through us because our own faith is hindered. Sometimes the power doesn't flow freely because of your own condemnation of what you feel is worthy. Somebody said, well, Bill, I was out and got drunk last night. That doesn't change anything. That doesn't change anything. Somebody said, I've done this and that. Doesn't change anything. Don't let your own condemnation stop the flow of healing and blessing that is rightfully yours. People keep asking for power, but you already have it. If you have the power, then how do you use it? Comes down to three things that I stress. Define, declare, and visualize. Define what you want. I don't care if it's a house, I don't care if it's a car, I don't care if it's a better job or you just want more money. Define that. There's nothing wrong with that. Define that. Then begin to declare it with your mouth. That's mine. That's mine. I tell myself all the time, I'm healed. I'm well. I'm blessed. Then begin to visualize it. Begin to put yourself in the picture. Visualize it. Somebody said, how can we have God's power? Well, first, you've already got it. Second, you have to believe what Jesus said. Behold, I give you power over all the power of the enemy. That's it. Now, it's not our usual type of lesson, but I felt like I needed to kind of tell you where all this came from. One day, and you know what, if you want to be honest, and you want to be honest with yourself, you've never felt like everybody else. Every one of you have felt special. Every one of you have felt, sometimes you might have felt weird, or you might have felt strange. Well, that was you being special. Special. Because God chose you. Your determination will bring you more than you can ask or think. Just remember, the destination is not going to change. You're going to make it. Sure, we used to preach in black churches and I'd have them yelling and screaming, I'm going to make it. I can take it. I can make it. That's what I'm telling you today. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this opportunity to teach these folks. I thank you for this opportunity that have given them healing and blessing. And I ask that you touch every single person. Let my spirit, let the God in me join with the God in them to give them healing and blessing and happiness and joy. Father, you said if there's two of us that agree, we could put 10,000 to flight. We're agreeing right now, and let them see the results. All the folks that we have prayed for, let them see the change in their lives right now. I'll give you all the praise. Amen. God love you. Sherry loves you. We're going to see you next week. God bless America.